Yeah, there we go. So we've got these different, I know they're all like the same color right now.
If you want to
Um,
re-download the CSV, just
oh yeah.
replace it. I changed the colors.
Awesome. Yeah, and you can do
That
hex values too. Yeah,
I
totally.
did that.
Download.
Does it need the numeric pound?
We'll see.
Welcome to Kit Crashing, where we explore landscape architecture, tools like 3D, parametric design, and AI. This season, I'm joined by guest host and landscape architect Ishaan Kumar. Ishaan brings the challenges, and I tackle them live, using computational design and my plugin, LandKit, to create better workflows.
Good morning, Ishaan.
Hey Chris, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
You always catch me on Thursday mornings every other week. As you know, I get out of therapy, so I'm very zen today.
Yeah,
My
nice.
therapist asked me, "Who are you?" Which is a very profound conversation, not for this
Wow.
space.
Yeah.
But one of the things I said was, I think, I'm a culmination of moments, and we're talking about legacy and what you leave behind as a father, as a person. And I just really appreciate this space that, is a moment shared, working in Argentina remote. I just finished a big deadline for local and I was like, I was looking forward to this and just a space to connect with someone. You hit a milestone and there's no one to celebrate with, no one to grab a beer with, and this is just a nice space for me to learn. And hopefully we create a buzz around and a community of people learning faster methodologies and working. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm excited for our shared space and also the fact that we're sharing that with others and that feels really great. Also, the sun came out this morning, so I'm feeling happy and I've been cooking a lot lately and just feels good. So
Lighter.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Well, today I think we the past two sessions we've done topo, and last week we did paving and just closing out the sequence. I wanted to focus on planting today, and this is, last week Ben did an amazing onboarding workshop. We had a nice crew of 12 people, and the focus of the onboarding workshop, the two hours, is really highlights how having a thorough database with features helps you place plants based on that database on environmental conditions so that you're putting the right plant in the right place. And I think it's fascinating that you guys have developed this and you could base it on hydrological conditions, flower conditions, expand it to fragrance, fire tolerance, pollinator values. And this isn't, I'm not going to dwell on that because we cover that on the onboarding workshops. But it's incredible that you guys have opened up the conversation to where we are today in this moment as design. And I think that I want to use this session also to critique, the way I work, the way I have worked, the way you've seen other people working. And
mhm.
this is a really far deviation from, landscape and its curated hedges and beauty or the monolithic blocks or placing plant by plant and calculating how many of every plant there is and then updating a schedule and then the path alignment changes in CDs and you have to go back and so I think we're way beyond this and but more and more clients are asking, they're inspired by this naturalistic look of Piet Odolf and others that are other active practitioners. But this requires another level of like higher elevated plant knowledge where the layering of one plant with the other. Piet, the way he works is he prints out these plans to scale and he knows that this blob is X square meters and it's going to have that many plants. And these plants are beautiful, but they require a very high, elevated level of understanding plants and design. And I don't have that. I'm trained as an architect. I went to Penn. I've worked at various firms that work in different ways. And one of the things that I've picked up on the way is not necessarily learning a catalog of plants, but thinking about planting design as communities and mixes. This is something that you and I have talked about. And, looking at these images by firms that I admire, you could start to see patterns of like mixes and zones that are starting to replicate that try to replicate natural conditions. And if we focus on this one image here, you got one meadow planting, shrubs with this pine structure, and this more upland mix on this dome. And so this is something that I'm attracted to, and I just want to take a second to talk about what you're seeing in the moment right now, and
Yeah.
and what do you gravitate to?
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you shared what you've shared so far. We've worked with Fido and we've learned a lot from them and early thoughts about the planting tools. Like we're not taking their recipe or anything crazy like that, but the idea of matrix planting and the idea of stuff that goes in the right place according, kind of an adaptive matrix, the stuff that goes in the right place according to different conditions was appealing to me, and I thought that was a great starting point for an adaptive system that could kind of be more mix based or more like conditions based and or somewhere in between. Um, I also really inspired by the work of, Pete Oldoff and also Nigel Dunnett, who
Mhm.
passed away
Recent.
recently. Um, and and we've also worked with Kelly Norris, and like this idea of kind of communities that are adaptive according to different conditions is really, I think, really powerful because that allows us to begin to not like necessarily think in terms of individual communities um, that are individualized, but that is like a broader kind of eco community that adapts according to conditions. With that said, I think so much of the industry still thinks about it this way in terms of like the mixes, right? And that like
Yeah.
you've got you've got kind of like these like little shrub and tree outcrops. You have this kind of base zone of like this coastal thing that maybe has some sort of adaptive thing like towards the water. You've got a meadow that has, its own parameters. But even within that, you might see like, okay, hey, we're going to do clusters of these like flowering perennials. And so I think the mix itself, how adaptive it is really depending on what you want to do. But I think there's this range that we can get to within the system that we have. So with LandKit. So I'd love to hear. So is this the system we're doing today?
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
to,
Okay.
go back, this you still have to understand the mixes and what goes where and we're working more and more in coastal areas
Right.
where datums are critical and climate change changes, what's low tide today in 100 years and these spectrums of time. I think
Yeah.
that's where LandKit becomes really powerful because you can have these conversations without being so fixed and in terms of what goes where. And as I said, I'm not the plant guru in the room, and someone once told me the smart people steal from other great designers. And I collect when I find great plant catalogs of projects. I use them to refer back. This is one that I like to use in New York where it has different zones and each, eco type has a mix of species and this becomes a resource. This was a
Yeah.
project I did at local and is understanding where it was in Jones Beach, understanding that it's near a salt marsh, a dune forest, a dune shrubland, and trying to bring those into tying that to the program and tying that with a look and feel for the program. So this is the way I like to work. It's always in mix. And today I want to focus on another local project. This is almost like doing my homework for me. And so in this project, we're now in Nassau Community College. There's a bunch of existing trees, beautiful, tall pines that surround this triangle. And the great thing about Nassau Community College is it has the only remnant of the Hempstead Plains grassland is the only grassland that exists today east of the Appalachian Mountains and has very rare species, and it lives within Nassau Community College.
Oh,
And
wow.
so what I wanted to do in this project is have a series of mixes that were tied to the conditions that I had, pulling the Hempstead grasslands into this triangular plaza, doing a woodland mix under the trees, and then I added a rain garden as well. And at Scape, I learned land effects, which I think is extremely powerful because you get to delineate areas and say, okay, this mix is going to have X percentage and it's going to have this triangular spacing, and it gives you the quantity. So as the blobs are changing throughout the design phase, you're never updating the quantities. And this is
Yeah.
something that I've grappled with LandKit is that I really value the right plant approach, but I also see the value of the mix. And so I think elevating this conversation to making it more transparent for me how to do that would be great because it's something that it's been a doubt in my head and how to connect the dots. Like land effects, you could set a zone and it gives you that quantity within that area. And we're not, I think in our conversations, you made it very clear that we don't want to be land effects. We don't want to replicate what they're doing. And you guys have already worked with them to maybe you could elaborate a little bit on those conversations that you've had with them.
Yeah, yeah, we've talked to them about kind of some interoperability because what we're trying to do is be a computational design tool, a placement engine, a tool for bringing analysis and planting together and thinking in terms of like a holistic approach to planting design that can be scalable at larger systems. And even work at smaller scales depending on how you're working. But Land Effects is largely a documentation software. Like there's
Hmm.
some visualization stuff, there's quantification, there's they have a great plant database as well. But it's really a lot about kind of documentation and getting it built sort of stuff. And I think we are much more focused on kind of early phases of the design process because we're very much in like a 3D space that can be analyzed and all of that. Yeah. So um, there are ways to obviously you can quantify, maybe not obviously, but you can quantify plantings that we do with our tools. But um, in terms of setting up desired quantities, there's some different ways we can do that as well. And I think you and I had kind of a slightly early conversation. You wanted to see how maybe we can
We could
show
structure
that
it.
in our
Yeah.
little episode here, our conversation about how we build a little plant database. And why don't we'll play that now. All right, let's look at how we set up a spreadsheet for plants. Just pretty basic approach here. There's a lot of things we can put in, but the most important are scientific name, right? And that's going to be the name of the plant species when it comes in. We want the mix. So I think what we were talking about earlier was doing, shrubland, um, meadow, and what was the other one? Wetlands.
Wetland.
Those are kind of nice. And then what we can do is just, separate this mix out to be just different. Each plant is going to be either shrubland, meadow, or wetland. You can actually repeat plants, right? And then for each plant, like let's say, Pinus something, and then we'll do a spread of, spread being the diameter. So let's say this one is like 8 feet or something. It's a small guy. And then the height is 20 feet or something. Might be our anchor species. And then we have a cluster radius. So for this, there's no cluster, 0. self-spacing between these things might be pretty far apart. So we might say, 20 feet or something. And that's edge to edge, like the radius, the outside of the radius of the plant. That's like how far apart it would be, not center to center. So then it's pretty straightforward. And then what you could do is you could say, all right, I'm going to have multiple things in the shrubland. I'm going to have, you know, um, give me something else.
Uh,
Blueberry.
uh,
That's not a scientific name, but the spread maybe is a lot smaller. So it's like, I don't know. We're just going to assume they might be able to grow at 4. I don't know how they'll do in this coastal condition, but that's where the AI comes in. We can ask, you know, that sort of stuff, or we can do a little bit of research, a little bit of both. Probably should do both. And then those grow pretty tall, 8 foot cluster radius. Let's say we always want to have them in clusters, so we might say that the cluster radius is going to be 24 feet. And then that's going to kind of create a cluster of plants.
a mass.
Yeah, a mass. And then the self-spacing is going to be 0 because we want them to be kind of in a mass. So those are the main elements. But then there's other things that you can add if for some reason we're using sun exposure. I don't think we're going to need it here as much, but
Hmm.
sun exposure, that's a standard, that we typically use that naming convention. There's soil moisture, which might be good. Like if we had the wetland mix and there's like different, for somehow we determined different soil moistures based on elevation or something like that, we could do soil moisture. So you can actually build in these different parameters here. You can also build in any other parameter that you want. You might say, okay, you know, this mix is going to have certain proximity parameters or something like that. You could set those up in the spreadsheet if you're trying to control things through the spreadsheet, but you can also set some of those things in the Grasshopper. So it's kind of a matter of how you want to set it up, and we're going to look at that. Make sense?
Yeah,
All right, so your
exciting.
assignment is to set up,
Create a list.
yeah, a list of these different things. And again, this is all in feet, but I'll share this with you.
Sweet.
All right,
Pause.
so now that we know how to build a plant database, um, let's look at what you've built.
Yeah,
And
sure. So,
unless you've, yeah,
um, so the goal here, I think, today is here, and this is the compelling GIF that I'm very attracted to. My prompt is, can we create these three different mixes at any time? And can we control within that mix the rules within? And so that's kind of my agenda today is to learn more about how I would set up a mix, how I could control certain parameters. What are the parameters that I can control? And your secret sauce. What conversations has I know, Landau does consulting work for other firms, like snippets of experiences or things that you've learned along the way that you could share in this informal chat. I'm
yeah,
very curious about. So
yeah.
I'll share
Well, we
what
certainly can't cover everything, but that's
no,
why,
no.
that's why we're gonna have more episodes. But I think we'll get to some good stuff today for sure.
So we talked last in the breakout, we talked about the setup of the mixes. So what I've done is based on 3 mixes, I have a series of plants, and this is the percentage breakdown that I initially had in my head. I'm not sure how that translates into parameters that we would use in land effects, like if this gets broken out
Blanket.
into cluster. And so you'll school me there. And then I filled out the head and sprite spread and height. And because I know that these values influence the size of the block in that get represented, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are some of the important parameters about the species size for sure.
And lastly, in the woodland mix, and again, we don't have to cover all this. We can break this out into two sessions. It can be to be continued. But here I was thinking of, there's
Oops.
different
Yeah.
species within the woodland mix that might gravitate to where the trees are. So understanding that level of resolution just within
Yeah.
the woodland mix would be a separate parameter. So I
Mhm.
dumped a lot on you there. Let's see how much we can cover. I'm gonna stop sharing screen and I sent you the CAD file with the different outlines and let's go to town.
Awesome. Oh, great. Thanks for sending outlines. So let me share my screen. So let's first have a look at the database. So there's a couple things. If you are wanting to kind of adjust amounts for kind of mixes, so these are our kind of our mix names. The way that we do that is we call it weight. And then the only thing you need to do is remove these percentage things, right? I think. I mean, it may also just get rid of those, but I think I'd just to be safe, I would just do that for now. If you could help me remove those. And
Yeah.
then spread, yes, that's going to be like the full spread of the plant, right? The diameter. Is that the number you were using, or I just want to make sure you're not using the
Yep, yep,
radius. Okay, so the
yep.
spread is going to be the whole diameter of the plant. And then the just adjusting my video here. Um, the one thing to look for is like this here. This is a something you really want to watch out for. See what it did there? It turned it into a date. So you
Yeah,
said
that
you
that was
want it to
something
be
you
a
talked about in
range.
the video and I didn't
Yeah,
remember. It was something with the
that's okay.
parentheses,
That's
right?
okay. And it's going to seem to our viewers like we just talked about it, but that was like last week. So let's give Ishaan some credit. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to say instead of 2, 3, we're just going to add parentheses here. And what that will do is it will make it so that it's not a date anymore. And
Okay.
the way that the tool that brings in the database works is that it will not recognize parentheses. And so the cool thing is you can actually create comments within parentheses within a plant database
Uh,
on any given field. So we'll
and
just copy this here.
what does
Um,
that mean in terms of how it would get presented in land in Rhino space? That block would vary from 2 to 3, or it's
that would be
either two
great,
and
but it actually it
just picks
averages
one.
it currently.
Okay.
And part of the
All right.
reason actually, oh, sorry, I messed this up. It's actually wants to be a dash,
A
not a
slash.
division. Yeah. So, it'll treat that like a range. But the thing it will do is when it creates the plant, it will create a minimum and a maximum size so that if you parametrically wanted to then do something and say, okay, assign the current radius to the whatever the max is,
Ah,
because I
nice.
know
So you
that
could
these
do
soils
change
are going to
over
be great.
time.
Or yeah, you could change that. And you can change it over time. That's something that we should look at. It will it will use default values to actually change the size over time,
It's like a
but you can also
percentage.
tell it that this is like what plant type, whether it's rapidly growing or not. And then we have registers for how fast different sized plants will grow according to whether it's
Amazing.
rapid or not. And that's all kind of built in. And it's an estimate. It's not, we
Yeah,
don't
no, no,
we don't
no.
have a way to change that in a really specific way other than like telling it exactly here's how big the plant will be at this time. But yeah, so that's another thing. So the other thing just to be aware of is that text-based values within the database, we can't create ranges between text-based values. So we can say shade and part, and we use part shade. That's the language we use. And then
Okay.
so part shade to shade. So there's three main values. There's sun,
Right.
part shade and shade. So I'm
Okay.
just adjusting these accordingly. So that, and then it looks like we're only gonna, oh, thank you. We're only gonna do the shading stuff for the, yeah, for this woodland mix. Um, from what I can see, that seems to be your intention, right? We're not gonna try to,
Yeah,
yeah.
because we covered that on the onboarding workshop.
Mhm. Yeah,
Let's not duplicate
yeah. So I'm gonna just, so usually we use sun exposure as
the
the
heading.
value there, the column name, because whenever we generate sun exposure using the sun exposure component, that will match. And we'll see
Okay.
all of this. But um, cluster radius, generally cluster radius is going to be the radius of the cluster of plants, right? And it basically creates a slight, circular plant. It does sort of diffuse the edge a little bit. The idea is like if you want kind of this clustering effect, it's going to be approximately this size, right?
And it's
So
always circular in form.
it is circular, but if you have a few of them, then they're blobbing together. Sometimes you can't really tell. Um, but yeah, so if you want like a really specific shape, that's when you begin to sort of draw shapes and you say, okay, put these
Right.
plants in those shapes. Um, but the way that we can think about it is if this plant wants to be basically edge to edge, those plants are going to be 20 feet apart, right? And that's pretty far.
Like a tree. Like if you
Like
were
this
to
would be like
do
a tree, but the spread of this tree right now, this is a very small tree.
no. They're all grasses and
Right.
perennials.
Okay. So yeah, so if this wanted to be like just let's say we just want to space this out and have 1 foot between the actual plant radiuses, between their circumferences, it would be one. Otherwise, if you have zero or nothing, they're going to pack together. They're going to be edge to edge. And the neat thing is you can plant them according to their max size, or you can also plant them according to a smaller size, and then when they grow, they fill in more later. So there's different ways to approach that.
So
I don't
just
want
to
to get too
interrupt.
complex too fast. I feel like
No,
we
no,
haven't
no.
even seen anything, but I
But
want
I
to kind
think
of
these
explain.
understanding the parameters is very
Yeah,
important because, when people, professionals are thinking about planting design, I think the spacing is very important to them because they think about like this plant is going to be a 2 gallon plant and we're going to place it at a triangular spacing of 12 inches, 24 inches, 36 inches. So that's the equivalent of this parameter that I put in land effects, let's say.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so if we're for our, this is the meadow, right?
Yeah.
We could, largely we could say like these all want to be spaced out a little bit, but if you don't give it a spacing, it's just going to fill in more matrix style.
Okay.
So we could say, a few of these are going to have, let's just do like a few that have a
A
few
bigger,
clustering
okay.
um, things happening, right? Like they're going to get placed and then other plants can also go around them. It depends on the spacing. So we could say, well, these are clustered, but they're going to have a space. And these are actually, you got to be careful with your logic because it's cluster radius and they're spaced out every 2 feet. So it's like, doesn't really make sense. So you'd want like maybe something that creates a
I
diffused
see.
cluster, right? So that gives us a little variation there, and then we can sort of leave the rest of these. That there's a rain garden, and I'm just throwing in some parameters. So we can also iterate this, right?
Yeah,
We're going to
yeah.
probably go back to this database, and we'll be able to change it. So I'm going to download this as a CSV file to yeah to my folder. It's downloaded. And I'll pull that into my my folder, and I'll just keep the name just so that if I download it again, it's the same thing, and then I'll just replace it.
Just replaces.
And then I've opened up Rhino. I'm calling this Coastal Hypernature. We might change the episode. I don't know. We'll see. I kind of liked, controlled mixes. That was another interesting one. So I'm just dragging in your LP or your planting plan. And I have a few options. I can open the file, I can import it or insert it. And as we said like last time, typically I like to insert, but I'm assuming this is just some boundaries.
Yeah, with hatches.
So I'm going to
I
import. I'm going to import. And I'm going to be in inches, I imagine. Well, the file that I'm bringing in is in inches, is what I'm
right.
saying. And then the layout units are, I guess, in.
Feet, right? To match the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I think so. I think that might have been where we went wrong the other day. So zoom out here. Wow, where are we? We're over here. So typically what I would do is I'd take all this stuff and move it closer to the origin. Do you mind if I do that?
No, not at all.
So I'm just going to do a move like from about there to 0. And if you just type 0 for a point, it's going to know you mean 0, comma 0, comma 0. Um, so if I now go zoom extent, I have, this zone. So what I'm going to do is select each of these. So I'm assuming are
Let's, for the sake of this,
yeah.
let's just do this is woodland, and there's some existing trees, blocks
Okay.
here. This is the grassland, the meadow, and let's just make all of this rain garden. So let's work with those three areas. I mean, we could just
Okay.
draw blobs arbitrarily after that to show it in other areas, but
So I'm going to change this to woodland, and then and which one am I? Sorry, I kind of missed it. So woodland, rain
Hempstead,
garden,
let's go, yeah, rain garden down here.
and do
And
you have a
then
hatch for that? Yeah,
I
you do.
think
You do.
so.
Okay. And then
And
this.
then this one, that's lawn. This one with the H over here is the meadow.
Okay. So you only have three zones you only have one zone of each, right?
Yeah, and I think for now that's uh,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it's enough to
It's a good start.
see to
Yeah.
visualize it.
Let's what I like to do is quickly change my colors. So I'll just show you how I pick colors with the color picker. So I'll do that, apply that, and then do my rain garden, which will be more lush, and then my meadow, which will be more tawny. All right. So I'll take all these elements, I'll select them from all the layers at once. I'm going to go to the properties, and under my hatch properties, I'm going to make all these solid. It looks like my rain garden doesn't like quite fill in here.
Curve. Oh
Is
yeah,
that
it's
correct?
there. It's it was like a gradient tied to elevation. See, and so that
Oh,
could be another parameter. I would just
hmm.
maybe just like draw a line there and curve boolean the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'll do that. So I'll do a line um, here for now. Or is that right? I'll just
Yeah,
do it
yeah.
here.
Just
Yeah.
close that up and we'll use that whole zone.
Yeah. And then what I do is I take these hatches, and if you explode the hatch, it becomes a surface.
Ah,
That's why I make but it has to be solid. If you explode a hatch that's got all the little pieces, it gives you all the little pieces, which we don't want. That's not helpful to us. So then I can take this and I can say dupe border, dupe B, and then I'll take this curve, and then I'll do what's called a curve
boolean.
Boolean, and I can click where I want to fill in, hit return, and now I have a boundary. But I'm gonna catch up and delete some of these things. So I'm gonna delete this, gonna delete that, delete this, and then now I should have.
One clean curve
Oh, you
outline.
know what? Maybe I deleted the wrong curve.
There you go. That one. You want that one.
Yeah, delete these, delete that. Now I have this. Okay, so I'll put that on the rain garden layer. And the other
And
neat thing is that I can use a closed curve or a surface for an area, right? This is the same as we did with the
with
paving.
paving.
Change object layer. Okay. So
I think
now,
here I would think about it more the way I'm more comfortable working would be with curves because then or outlines because then those shapes you can change instead of trimming the
yes.
surface,
Yeah. So
right?
the neat thing is I can select my meadow. I like to be on the layer just to be sure. And then I say dupe,
Border.
oops, dupe border. And then I delete the surface.
Okay.
I can do the same thing here. So I take this and I go to the woodland layer. I say uh, dupe border, and then we delete the surface. All right. So it's harder to see the surfaces. So there's always a little bit of a trade-off. There's ways that we can fix this. So I'll hit save, and then I'm not sure how useful my. No, I'm not going to use that. Oh, yeah. Eh, I don't need all this. Delete all this. Phew. And then, have you guys ever seen these? You can actually say delete placeholder. I didn't know you could right click and delete them for until recently. But those are usually placeholders for a plugin you don't have installed currently. And that was just like an old version of Elefront or something that I had in there. So what we'll do, it's like, where do we start? This is sometimes how I feel like I'm just crashing into a project, right? This is one of the reasons it's called kit crashing. I just start to say, what do I have and what do I need to start
Okay.
doing? So I have areas. Let's start there. So we say, um, you know, we're going to do a layer pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll do um, two forward slashes to get my panel
Outline.
going.
Yeah.
I'll do my underscore areas and then the two dashes or the two colons. And then I do a wild card, which is an asterisk. Sorry, that's so small. Then I'll zoom in here. I plug this in, and you can see that if I hover here, it brings in a bunch of stuff. It looks like it's bringing in a bunch of points. So just like with my template from before, I'm going to say show. I usually do this to not to like remove stuff that's um
Clean up the file.
yeah, let me try again. Show, select all these areas, select objects. Yeah, there's a bunch of points somewhere. Oh, they're down here. Somehow they got moved over here. Delete those. And now when I zoom into my pipeline, I only have three closed curves, which is the curves that we have in your plan.
Do you want to just turn off everything else?
Yeah, we could. I'm not, yeah, I guess
Concern.
it would hide it pretty well. Let me see. So I can just because of the layer templates, the way I have them set up, all of the new CAD layers are down here. And then I'll just turn them off. And now I see only the three zones.
Perfect.
Um, yes, save. All right. I can do a quick visualization. I can say, create an area and then get the area stats. There's a few ways to do this. I like this because I like inputting the data into the area and making sure that it has all the data it needs. And then I can say bake plus, and I can visualize this as a color and hide all this. So now I have like the surface, these areas visualized. So if I'm
Oh,
like drawing on those layers and I'm just doing the curves, as we said, I'm seeing those changes.
so this color is pulling the color of the layer
Yeah,
here in Rhino.
yeah,
Nice. That's
yeah.
really useful.
So this is one of the things we really liked about the layer pipeline idea was that we could pull certain things that are getting used all the time. Like we're always using the layer name and the color name. And even with the new Rhino, there's like to do that, you need like a couple different components to start to pull all that information out of any given geometry. And it just was heavy. And so there were some reasons we did the layer pipeline, and that was one. The other thing we did was we could, as I said in the last, episode, in the paving episode, we could put collage in this area, right? So we could have these things layered and have shapes that are then being collaged according to
Right.
their uh, placement in space. We're not doing that. Anyway, so I have these different areas and I've created the areas. Now there's ways that I can pull these now that they are areas. I can pull them by name. So I can say, okay, all the ones that are called um, you know, wild card. I think this should work. Meadow will go here. Yeah,
Why
and
do you
so it
need the
pulls.
asterisk?
The asterisk says like anything that happens before this doesn't matter. All I want is something that has meadow in the name at the end,
Okay.
right? You have to be careful because like if you
Within
have
your
meadow
Rhino
somewhere
layer
else in your
structure.
file, it might
Okay.
bring that in. So that could be
Okay.
a problem. The other way to do it is just to say, just to be safe, we're going to do underscore
Underscore
areas
areas. Okay.
two colons. Let's do that. And then I'm also going to group this, Control G, and just type meadow, right? We have it here, but sometimes it's nice to have the extra label so that we know what's going on. So I'm going to just do each of these. We'll do meadow. Um, did we call it?
I think we call meadow woodland and rain
Oh, rain
garden.
garden. Yeah.
Can I derail you for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's say I wanted to visualize the area. Is that something would that be a key?
Um, what do you
Like based
mean?
on this outline, if we wanted a label there that said the area.
Yeah. There's a couple ways you could do that. One way is to up here where we're getting, it's better to do this after, like in case you want to throw that collage component in there. So I like to do it downhill, downstream, so to speak. So we can say populate the geometry. The typical thing you would use this for is populating with a lot of points. So it's like fills in 100 points per area. But if you just do one, it puts it somewhere on that shape, right? And it's not like necessarily right in the middle or something, but it gives you a single point. And then we could say create text. And we have this new bake text component, which I really like, obviously for my reasons, and then I can pull in the layer here of the text and I can plug this into the planes. The one thing to watch out for is this is what's called fancy wires in Grasshopper. And fancy wires is nice. It's an option when you're visualizing things, I think under display, draw fancy wires. If you have a grafted tree, data, it's going to show the dotted line. So you can see here, this is like multiple lists of stuff. And it does that because if it were 100 points, you'd want to say, okay, the 100 points for this branch and 100 points for that branch. But in our case, we know that it's 1 point, and so we can actually flatten this. Oops, I can right click on that output and say flatten. So, so now I have one text per plane rather than three
Okay.
per each branch, right? And then I can say that I want it to be white and that it's going to go on a layer called Ano. It could even be L. you know, uh, area, something like that, right? So I'm going to plug that into the area, but also into a bake name. And the reason
Right.
we do that is that if every time I change it, it's baking, I want it to overwrite the old bake name. And that bake name needs to be really unique because I know I'm just using this layer here. I don't need to worry about the uniqueness of it. But then I can do a toggle, a Boolean toggle. It always messes me up. I always want to type Boolean, and if you type Boolean, that's something else. It's like solid Boolean. So let's do true, and then we'll plug that into bake, and it bakes our name, and then we can change the size to 0.23 or something, and just see. Oh, actually, we want to go bigger. I thought we were. Oops.
Oh, what did you do there?
If you double click on the wire, it creates kind of like a point where you can diverge, so you can like have the wire go
Ah,
in different places. Uh, so I'll do 2.5. So when you're typing the number, the level of fidelity is going to be based on the number you're typing in. There's ways to change the slider settings, but I like to do that. So I can change this and make this a little bigger here. I'm really getting into the weeds here before we get into the actual planting. But
no, this is useful.
this is another tool really fast that is a replace text. So the layer name, we can replace our underscore areas, can get rid of all of this stuff and then just replace it with nothing. And then I'll plug that into text, and now I just have meadow, woodland, garden.
Ah,
If I hide this, now I've got these nice labels. Right? I can also adjust the font here too. So I could say,
the F is what you're removing, and it's just okay. I see.
yeah, so it's find and replace. Maybe it doesn't have Helvetica.
Yeah, I understand why this baked text is a favorite for you.
Huh. Might need Times New Roman. Mhm.
And the text would the surface area be the area of each one of these?
The surface area, yeah, it's the surface area. So we wanted the area stats to be a way of kind of getting the underlying geometry, layers, colors, any data that's stored in the area, and then the surface area seemed like a nice, convenient thing to have coming out of there as well.
What if it's not a surface? In our case, it's a curve.
Well, every area, well, so when you input a curve instead of a surface, it's actually creating a surface.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, So, so if like when we were doing the paving, we were explicitly using surfaces because we wanted to make sure that the surface was
The
oriented
rotation.
properly. When it automatically creates a surface out of a curve, you don't know which orientation it's going to be. So I know that has nothing, well, very little to do with planting. It actually will if we use any kind of patterning, which I think would be nice
I-
to use.
If
We're
we,
going to have to keep moving though if we want to get to all these mixes.
all right, wait, last thing, surface
Yeah.
area to text, that would give you the area of each zone.
Yeah. Here. So if we plug this in to here, surface area. We could just skip we don't want to replace areas. So now, yeah, so now it gives me a number.
That's what I wanted to see. Okay, great.
Oh, okay. So you wanted the actual area of.
Yeah, because then
Oh, okay.
because if let's say you're trying to get you have a certain square footage of planting that you want to have and you want to meet certain percentages, this becomes an easy way to visualize that without clicking and saying, area. So this is super useful in terms of like design percentages across a plan.
Yeah,
All
totally.
right. A big derail, but one that is
It's
really
okay.
cool. Great, great, great that you could do this.
Again, this is why we call it kit crashing. Um, so so if we have a CSV, we downloaded a CSV of our plants. So I'm gonna create plants from CSV data. If I click on this, it's gonna take a second. Why is it taking so long? Yeah, I think I know why. I think I might know why. We've recently connected like the an API to it that will like bring plants in, but we're gonna use the CSV. So what all we do is we do a file um, path component from this is like one of the input components for Grasshopper. It's like one of these container components. I plug that into well, first I'm going to set the path. So I say select one file, and then we're going to go to Kit Crashing, and we'll do episode 3, Hypernature, do our example files, and we want this CSV file. Okay. And then we'll plug this into here. It automatically brings in all our plants. So all our plants are here. Let's have a quick look at plants because this is it seems like we're approaching this in a way that's new to everyone. So if we say plant data, so we're going to get the current plant data. We plug this into here. There's different things that we can get. We can get all the plant's attributes. And the plant attributes are things that it's either we've defined or were taken from the data that were recognized as things that can be used as attributes. And I'll explain that in a second. So we're going to also do that. This is a new cool thing that we've created called sort key values. And it's an adaptive component that when you plug in the keys, it automatically creates
Oh, wow.
outputs for all the values. And we plug in the values, and now those are all here. So I can visualize these by saying, what is the area? The area is this, or what is there's a lot of things that these plants don't have right now, but they do have like current height. They also
Which
have like a
corresponds
max
to the
height
column.
versus a
The
minimum height.
column.
Sorry, what's that?
So this corresponds with that column in that we put in the CSV file.
Yeah, exactly. So we have like a radius max, a radius min, and that changes for some of these. And then we also have the radius current, which is usually what's used. So if you wanted to change those values, it's usually radius current. We also have W, which represents the weight. So we have the weights for all of those that you input originally
Mhm.
as percentages. The weight is cool because you don't have to do a percentage. You don't always have to calculate the percentage. You could say, well, all these are a 1 with the exception of this one, which is I want twice as much, so it's going to be a 2. And that's nice because then if you add another species, you're not having to recalculate all your
Recalculate. Nice.
percentages. And we like the recipe method here because you can add and subtract more easily. Species
Cooking.
cooking, yes. Cooking with plants, which is a healthy thing to do. I recommend it. So you can also do data keys. So we can plug in the data keys and you see it adapts. And so we have these are all the things you put in. So we have our cluster radius, we have our
Oh wait,
height.
you lost me. The
Okay,
other one,
sorry,
the
sorry.
other way,
This this
attribute keys.
these are attributes. So the attribute you have to think. I like to think of it this way. A bee has attributes. It's like how many legs, how long are the legs? So it's how fat is the bee? How long are its antennae? And then the data, the plant data is like the pollen on the bee's legs. It's not really part of the bee, but it's an important piece of how what the bee's going to do. Like, and we can always get that data from, sorry, this is really
But
confusing, but the plant, we can always get that data if it hasn't been automatically applied as an attribute.
wouldn't I always want the data key and the data? Why
No,
would I
because
just want?
like the data, so the data like the spread for say, this is just a piece of data called spread. It's not actually like when I go to draw the plant later, I don't want to have to pull that data and then, there's actually a tool that
Ah,
draws the plant and uses the attributes.
okay,
Right? There is
okay.
ways to change the data, to change the attributes here right in Grasshopper as part of like a parametric flow, but we're trying to make it so you don't have to do that, right? Like it is possible, and we do use it to affect at different times, but you don't always have to use it.
Would you have two key value components in like one with attributes and one with data?
You could, but we're just doing this to look at what's in here.
What's coming out?
We're not
Okay.
gonna pull all this data out, I don't think.
Okay.
There's some interesting things that we're gonna do. So we can do this. We can pull, trying to think of the best way to do it. So we can get we have, let's get the attributes. Oh, also just notice anything that's a range, it actually comes in as a domain, like 2 to 3. It's actually, this is coming in as a domain. So LandKit automatically recognize whether something is a string or a number or a range, and depending on how it came in. And that's another nice thing that it does from a data perspective. So if I plug in the attribute keys and values, I just wanted to show you the data. And then I say the species, that's that scientific name.
Okay.
Actually, no, what I want is not, sorry, I'm messing this up. It's the mix that we want. So the mix, we know that we have this list of 3 things that are being picked from. There's a couple ways I can do this. Like let's say I have a lot of mixes and I need to sort this out in kind of a data way. I can say create set, and that's like it takes all of those values and it says, you know, how many different
Yeah.
things are there? What is the set?
Right.
I can do it that way. I also think that because we know and we're creating these very explicitly, I'm just going to do it by text. So I'm just going to say rain garden, and I'll say, whether this, um, what's the best way to do this? I'm going to
When you
match
have it,
text. I'm going to match text. So if the text matches, so if I'll say I'm going to get a mix, here's the text, and then the pattern that I'm matching is the rain garden name. And this tells me whether or not it's a match. Then I can say call pattern. So I say, okay, give me the actual plant and use the pattern here. And this is going to give me plants that are in the rain garden. All right, so that's a little messy. So let's untangle it. So I'll move this out of the way, pull this up here. We want sort of tight little bundles of logic, right? We don't want our logic to be all over the place,
spider
and
web.
we don't want a bunch of, weeds in our garden. So we see, or let's call them opportunists. So we have rain garden, meadow. My friend Sam always says opportunist. She corrects me. And uh, I don't know why I keep like a woodland.
Rain garden, woodland.
All right. So we have those 3. So if I do, um, each of these is going to connect in some ways to the list. And I'm just looking at the order. So now I have these 3. They're in the right order, just so that when I go to grab them later, I'm not grabbing the wrong ones. So what do we have? We have plants, we have areas. We're done, right? No, just kidding. We need to fill them in with these plants. So let's do the dumbest thing, which is to say fill plants, fill the area with plants. So we take the area, the ones that are polled in each case. So the polled area and then the plants. Is this not giving us any matches? That's interesting. Meadow.
Because
Oh,
it's
Hempstead. Hempstead.
Hempstead, yeah.
There we go. That's something. So it's telling me there's an issue. There's a what forgot. Oh, because we're filling with a pattern. I'm actually just gonna fill. I thought I grabbed this one instead. I'm just gonna start with this.
What's the difference?
So fill area, and it just filled them by the way. You can see that it took, this is the profiler widget, which tells you how long things take. It just filled all three areas with all the plants. We can't see them. We can visualize them in a second, but this allows you to put in a pattern of points, right?
Uh,
And then it will fill every point with a plant. So if you have a grid, whether that's a hex grid or a triangle grid or a square grid or whatever, running bond, you can put in that pattern and it will fill. But you need a pattern per area. And we usually what we do is we just do paving and then we get the center point of every paver and plug that in. So that could also work. In fact, because this is so simple, I'm just going to do standard pattern. Oh, sorry, not standard pattern. Yeah, add pattern to area. So we'll take the area and automatically fills it with a
a
pattern.
running bond 2x1.
Yeah, and I'm going to do a hex pattern. That's probably a better, more logical thing. And then I would plug, I'm going to do a evaluate box.
To
That's
get the
that's my
center
preferred
point.
method for getting. So it turns it into a box and then it gets the center of that box by default.
Nice.
Plug that point in to there. It's going to try to fill each point with a plant. And so now we have two different ways to visualize this. We're going to jump to the fast way to do this, which is to bake our plant blocks. And we'll plug in the area. There's a default layer, which is plant underscore blocks. But because we're going to have a different mix for each one, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. I think there's a reason we're going to do this way, and I think it's just better to keep it under generic, something generic, because what will happen is if we let's say we have a plant that occurs in multiple mixes, like we've duplicated it because we want the weight to be different or something, we think the radius will be different because of the species it's by, who knows. We don't want it to override when it bakes, we don't want it to override the old one. So I think actually having them all be part of one mix is better because then it will recognize them as all like that species name and it will bake them all
Unique.
at once.
Okay.
So um, so we're gonna bake. We need a toggle, and we're going to overwrite, which is true, and then we're also gonna bake, which is true. So what that does is it should, why is it not showing up? It's because it doesn't have a style. Something happened. Okay, hang on. Let me hide this. Maybe my plant layer is off, possibly. Plants, plant blocks. Okay, there might be something odd about our plants. I'm not sure why that happened. Uh-oh. Okay. Might have something to do with our data. Probably has to do with our data. Let me see if I can just try a different block style. Let's see if that does it. That did not work. Sometimes let's see if there are any plants here. So we're gonna do, um, let me check my units. Distance from here to here is 52 feet. That seems about right, right? It's a big planting area. Um, and then let's plug this in and see if that works. Okay, I think it has to do with the actual get plant, get area plants. So I can get the area and get the plants. Let's just see what it gives me 4,592 plants. So there's definitely plants there. And for some reason it doesn't want to. I'm gonna just see if I can delete this layer if that has something to do with it. That is really concerning. I wonder if it has something to do with the plant names, like these these quotes.
Ah, let's remove it for now. I I also
I'm just gonna remove the quotes for now.
This is one that panicum exists in the meadow too, but it was just a different species. So
Yeah. I'm also just kind of looking to see if there's any other data things that might be an issue here. Just gonna download this again, CSV, and then hopefully this we'll just replace. Okay, so I downloaded it and then I pulled it back into that folder and it said, do you want to replace? I said yes. And then what I'll do is go here and just replug this file path into here and it should refresh. Um, and it's got to place all the plants again. But there's definitely something happening here, which is concerning and annoying. I wonder if I'm going to try purging this file real fast. Very strange. Well, just so that we can make sure that we're getting something. I think probably the better thing to do, there's something going on with the bake tool here. And I'm going to not use this tool for now. Just so we'll just visualize everything live. So what this does is it gives you species name and it's in branches, these data branches. So everything on a certain level is always all the data for that tree. So the nice thing is you can do things with it and it lines up properly. So our species, our symbols, whatever the symbol style was, our colors, our locations, radii, and heights. So we can use those to create things, but the symbol is really the thing that helps us. So the crazy thing is it draws this for this particular one, it draws the symbol kind of usually in another location. So we're going to say orient. We orient that symbol for each location. So we say, here's the symbol. That's going to be our starting point, and then it's going to start from 0 and go to oops, not to here, and then that places it in a location, right? So now we got plants. So I'm going to hide this. We have plants that are starting to be placed here, starting to look like something.
mhm.
Then we're gonna do the bake plus preview. I have no idea what's happening here. I'm like really curious. We'll have to do I'll have to investigate, but I don't want to take up too much of our episode here to do that. So I'll take this, I'll do color, um, and oh, because we haven't defined any colors for our plants. So we can go here and we can say flower color and we can
Mm.
define a color. So flower color, and I think it's 2 words. We can do hex values for these, or we could say, white, um, yellow. It uses basic colors, and I'm just gonna just to demonstrate, and we could always change it later, right? Now I'll say file, download a CSV file again.
So the representation of the block corresponds to what you put in the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Or you can change it in you can change it in the Grasshopper, but in
That's
this
super
case,
useful.
yeah,
You don't have to bring this into Illustrator and then like change all these line weights to that color. You can straight up export it.
yeah, exactly. So I'm going to zoom in here and then replug that. And there we go. So now we have, stuff that corresponds with those colors we put in, right? And you can see that we have clustering, right? And they're circular, but if it's a smaller group, it doesn't seem circular, right? It matches, or what am I trying to say? It shifts a little bit. It doesn't, um, yeah. So you can see that each of these, like, you can see very distinctively that we have clusters that have spacing in a certain cluster, ones that don't, other ones that are just placed randomly. So you could adjust your whole mix this way in the spreadsheet, right? You could say, oh, I want these plants to be kind of, more frequent, but they're going to be in clusters, and I want these other things to kind of fill in between. And this is a very, very much a matrix planting approach. So even though there are clusters, they're not necessarily going to like completely block out other plants, right? Like there's a little bit of permeability
Overlap.
between them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me just hide. I like to hide things, even though there's no geometry there. I'm neurotic. I just hide these, and then I can, only the stuff that I can see is going to show up, right? So we don't need that. We can hide this. This is showing up. We're not going to use this for now. Let me, this is what I like to do when something is not working. Not working. Um, oops. There we go. I'll just move him out of the way for now. We can also see, I was mentioning this idea of a pattern, so I'll plug the pattern one in. The pattern one looks a little different. Um, the weights adjust a little bit differently because of the fact that we have like a set number of points to fill in, but you get the idea. And then we can pack the plants here like this. So we can say, um, this takes a second because what it's doing is it's sort of running a little simulation as if all of these are balls, and it's saying, show. Why is that not updating? Oh, did they actually? They baked.
Yeah, it did.
What the heck? It's actually baking now. Okay, great. I don't know what happened, but delete that. We can bake our stuff now. Okay, so the cool thing is, see how these are getting sorted out? Oh, my mom's calling me. Um, see how these are kind of getting sorted out a little bit? And look at this. The sorghastrum is still a black layer because there was no color defined in the beginning. So we'll just make him kind of a different color, right? So see how they fill in, and I can do more steps. So right now the default is 20 steps. 100 is usually pretty good. Beyond that, it's like slightly diminishing returns. So part of the problem here is it's not really going to fill in all the way because of some of the settings we have. So I can say fill it in a little bit more, right? So make it, rather than 100%, make our packing ratio 120%. So 1.2. And then what happens is it's going to take a few seconds to fill it, to pack it, and it updates, right? And we can adjust those weights. Like if the results we're not happy with the weights, we can go and like change those weights, we can change the cluster radiuses and everything else.
But Chris, this is great. I we're we've lost the the pattern approach, like the gridded layout approach, right?
Yeah, yeah, we're
Which
not
is
using that. We can do that here. We can plug that in there, and now we have that gridded approach.
and this gridded approach still has the cluster rules
Yeah,
embedded in it.
yeah. So you can see there. But the problem is that the proximity stuff, like the self-spacing stuff, unless it's bigger than the pattern, it's not going to show up. If that makes sense, like if I say, oh, it's going to be like a half a foot space and the plant in the pattern doesn't even get to half a space, then you won't see that. But if it does start to get bigger, you will see that spacing on the pattern. So this, yeah, this is the grid. So if I turn that grid back on, you can see that every single point is filled with a plant, right? And if we had rules, like we're not really doing any rules yet. We haven't even set up environments. It's just using if you don't plug in an environment, and the environment is the thing that stores all the data, like all the like
Mhm.
elevation data, sun exposure, things like that. If you don't import an environment, it automatically now generates one that's just flat and generic and doesn't have any
Right,
layers. And
right,
so there's therefore no rules in terms of, you know, and this is the way a lot of people work.
right. Which
Right?
is
A lot
what
of
I was
people
just gonna
just
say
want to
that.
fill the mix and be able to do this thing. And so we've made it a little easier by changing a few things to do that. I think the reason this wasn't possibly working before is because there was no color values. I think that might be what happened. I think I need to evaluate it. This needs to have like if there's no colors, it's just like a programming thing I need to fix. Um, so that's that. And so we could very quickly
Just copy that down
do these
and
other guys. Yeah. So if I
right.
say, take this, copy paste, it's going to take a second it's still filling, it fills them every time. So we have a different, I'm just going to lock it for a second while I do this. So I have the pulled area. I have a different plant list. And then I'm gonna do a merge of my data, and I can delete this now. We know what the problem is. I'll merge this area, and then I'm gonna copy this and do our pulled area and our list of plants. And then I'll plug this into here, hit save we'll plug this into here. So I'm basically saying bake everything at once, right? So like I said before, if,
Right.
if I had like sorghastrum, whatever in this list and this list, it's
It's
gonna
not gonna, I see.
gonna bake them both. So then we can unlock and it should bake everything. It looks like it didn't. I don't know why. So let's have a look here. Let's investigate. Maybe I just need to, I don't know, plug this in again or something. That's very odd. Okay. Oh, I think I see what I'm doing. So I
You pull
created I created a pattern based on this area and it's plugging into all these. So
into all of them, right?
I need
You
to
have
pull
to
this into
replace.
here as well.
Right.
And I need to pull this
There
into
we go.
here. And then there they go. They start to appear. Or they should. So that's a good pattern, but for some reason we're not seeing anything. We have a plant list. Are we getting any plants? We're not getting any plants. So rain garden was not typed
That
properly.
matches. Oh, no, it matches.
Oh, okay, there we go. It's working. So we do have, I don't know, for a second there, it looked like there were no plants. Strange. Okay, so hide this. This is spooky stuff. We're trying to do a lot at once though. Like we're trying to, pull all this stuff out of one set of mixes, and so our plants are correct, our locations are correct.
All right.
All right, let me just try this plant. Sorry, plant block info. Yes, all they're there. There are plants. Huh. I'm confused. Let me do this. Let me go here, select all these, delete, and just see if, and I'm gonna do purge real fast. Did you duplicate plants? I wonder if that's a reason this is happening.
No.
This is bizarre. And then we've got stuff that's not showing up here now. So I wonder if of course,
Rain garden woodland, that corresponds.
info. This is why people tune in. Oops, that's not right. Block. Oh. Mm. So we have all of these. Again, I don't know what's happening here. So we're just gonna do the one area for now. And then we'll visualize these this way. It's very odd. Very odd. So now we can see these. We're gonna do a 10 again. 10 again. Then we'll do this one. And hide these. So now we can see that all the plants are there. There's something up with this bake, the way we were like, oh, hey, let's just combine everything into one. Um, I don't know if it was a branching thing or something or what. I thought I flattened that though. Let me just try this real fast. Flatten. Didn't work. Strange. Okay. So we're gonna visualize this way, and I shouldn't have done that. So we'll take this, and then we're gonna do the bake plus so that we have our colors. We're doing a lot in this one little session, but I feel like it's pretty cool how much we're able to cover. Um,
Beautiful.
and then we have our colors, our geometries, and yeah, there we go. So we've got these different, I know they're all like the same color right now.
If you want to re-download the CSV, just
Oh yeah,
replace it. I changed the colors.
awesome. Yeah, and you can do hex
The,
values too. Yeah,
I
totally.
did that.
Download.
Does it need the numeric number pound?
We'll see. Replace, save, save. And we can like this bake plus thing, we can always bake to a specific name, right? Like it's just not going to bake them out as blocks. That's the only thing. unless we do something with block baking or something. I'll plug that in and oh, here's the problem though. If if it's already created a layer with the plants, uh, like if it's baked it as a block, it's not going to show up. But here you've done that hex value for this one plant. And so it's going to preview it. The preview will work, but the baking of the blocks will not change the color. That's what I'm trying to say. We also have this one goes up to 11. Somebody said that before. Say OK, and it will change the block style. So if I do,
10 and 11 are 3D.
yeah, 10 and 11 are the 3D blocks. And then I can sort of visualize them like this. They're gonna, show up a little bit differently. For some reason, it's flattening that preview out a little bit. Might be my zoom, but there we go. It's a little nicer. If it's grass, if you change the plant type in the data to grass, it will change the block. Or if you change it to a tree type, it will change the block. So that's kind of a nice thing. But otherwise, it's this sort of plant blob thing.
And so here the grayed out is because
It's
it's not the
grayed.
same because it's not the same component as the one above.
I think you put cyan, and that's what it was. So cyan is not a legal color. So let's just use green or blue green. Let's see if that works. We say download CSV file, and then I'll pull that. I'm dropping this right into my folder and replacing the old one. And then when I can either say I can. This is basically most of the script when I replace that. So I can also just hit play, which refreshes the whole script. It just reruns the whole thing. And then now it should be, I think blue-green was a color. I was wrong. It's not a color. Let's just do blue.
Is there, I think you guys have a resource on the website
Yeah.
with
Yeah. If you go to land kit, um, there's under the component reference, this is at the bottom of the page, components reference. We have references for all these different components. And then here under, let's see, I'm always not sure. It's under data. So create plants from CSV data. You can also search for CSV. Like, let's do that actually. So this is the easier thing for most people. CSV. And you search and it's, oh yeah, create plants from CSV data. You click on that. It tells you what are your inputs, what are your outputs, and then down here, we usually like to add extra information if it's a particularly complex component. And in this case, there's all kinds of information about how these things work, about adding parentheses, about how months work in terms of like bloom calendars and things like that, color names. There's a list of all the color names, right? And what they'll translate to. These are all based off of the USDA plants the original ERA or eco-regional plant database that we had, that we've been basing this off of. So that there's all your plants. We haven't really set up rules, but I feel like given our time, we
yeah,
should we should think of this, look at rules the next time around, or
yeah,
I don't know if it's like a part two or something. Um,
definitely.
could be a part two to this.
Yeah, I think this is a great step already. Like just showing we've already covered percentage, which is weight in terms of how LandKit is processing this. We see the plants. We could change the style to be a block and export that into CAD. Um, this is nice because we get to visualize in 3D. Yeah, and then you could just add areas as well,
You
and
add an
it'll
area and
automatically.
then it automatically finds the area and then bills. This is where it crashes.
Yeah,
There we
see, this is
go.
what I mean.
Where,
This is what I mean. I think it's great that we added that number there.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
know
So
it
you
was
can,
derailing, but that I had a purpose
no,
there.
no, it's good. It's an important factor when you're trying to figure out that. And now that our plants are in the way, there's kind of some issues with the way that that's displaying. So you can say, move this thing.
Z value
Um,
up.
and fortunately, the default move is 10 feet up, which is great. We don't need to um, do anything there. We can plug that into the plane, and then we can change this to something that shows up better for against the plants, like red or something like that. And oh, this is another thing, is this is baking to a particular layer. Again, that it's not going to override the color when you're baking, so I just would need to change the color here.
I see.
Oops, I'm changing the wrong layer. Sorry, it's
No, that
here.
was right.
I was changing the woodland layer. There we go.
I see.
So and maybe I make the text a little bigger. There we go. So you can see how much area, and this is great for when you're trying to say, we're targeting this much area for these things. There's also ways to turn this into, we can do carbon calculation. Like each area can have a carbon value, and then we could be calculating carbon of our whole site, and we could be looking at those numbers as well.
Why don't
It's
we,
not counting plants. Just to be clear
you
that the
know,
carbon calculator doesn't count plants, but yeah.
why don't we use this base? I think there's so much that we can unravel from this. Like the prompt of planting design, bringing another project to the table is kind of, we could do that endlessly. I think we should use this one to keep on developing further,
Yeah, let's do
and I
episode
think that
two for
let's
this
split
part.
this.
Yeah. All right, we'll do it. Cool.
Great. Really cool.
Thanks for joining. I'm gonna try to figure out what the heck happened with my block uh, tool. I'm not sure. It's a little odd. It's a little odd. Oh,
Yeah, and
this is interesting.
the color as well.
This wasn't doing it before, but because we have two, it's creating two sets of patterns. So I want to flatten these out. There's different ways to pay attention to these things. We can sort that out in the next episode.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we'll look at some of the nuances of how this things scale. Um, Try to iron some things out, and then look at sun exposure. Look at maybe water, which would be great for our water garden, and just start to set up some rules-based planting on top of our
Amazing.
mix-based planting.
I'm pumped. This is great. This is a great first session. I could
Yeah,
see this dragging out to many though. So it's exciting that we have this base to go back to.
yeah, absolutely.
All right,
Cool.
Chris.
Thanks,
See you
Ishaan.
next time.
See you next
Ciao.
time.